Hi, class. How are you? I hope everything is going fabulous for you this week. Just wanted to, before we jump into some lecture materials for this week, tell you congratulations for completing half of this course. This lecture is set for you to complete during week 3, which means you only have week 3 and week 4 left for your course to be completed. And the wonderful thing is this puts you that much closer to your goals. So I know sometimes life can be really challenging with balancing work and life and school and all the things. So just keep pushing forward. I find many people who find success, they're not necessarily always, they're not saying you're not talented, but they're not always the most talented. Or, they don't have to be the quote unquote top student as far as in when it comes to assignments and things. What really sets people apart are habits of mind and habits of work. So organization, task completion, just really grinding it to make sure that you put one foot in front of the other and keep doing work. So just keep pushing yourself, that perseverance, that tenacity, that stamina, that's what's going to really get you to those goals. So keep pushing through even when it's hard because you're investing in yourself. And I just appreciate you for being so dedicated to your journey. And of course, as I always say, I'm happy to be a part of this learning community. On that note, as you get feedback from week 1, and then you work on your week 2 paper, what I'm noticing is that some people are not attending specifically to MLA formatting, and what I don't want you to do is constantly get the same feedback. So I thought I'd give you a visual to help you, in particular with your week 3 and 4 paper. That way, as you get feedback, you are able to strengthen your skills, but also earn all of the points. So you'll get your feedback on your, and actually I think I misspoke, on your week 2 paper, right? So you get your feedback on your week 2 paper, and then you'll use this for week 3 and 4 to write. And so some of the things that is most often missed or overlooked or maybe not done correctly is what I'm going to show you. I'm not going to walk through every single thing on this paper. What I'm going to show you is the things that's most commonly missed, and then I'll drop a link for the website where you can dig into other aspects of MLA and you can look at the sample paper for yourself. So you'll have the link to the sample paper, the website, and then this video walking you through. So the first thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is how your, what some people would do a title page is actually at the top left of your first page of writing. So you don't need a separate title page for our purposes. You just need to do it like you see here, double spaced at the top left. And then you will put your last name and then the page number on every page. Please make sure that your page number and your last name is in the traditional 12s times Roman font. You want to make sure that you don't have a different font for the page number or your last name. I said ramen, like we're eating ramen noodles, Roman font. So just make sure your font is consistent for everything, including that part. The other thing I wanted to just bring your attention to is that there is a title here. You can just put paper number 1, paper number 2, paper number 3, whatever, as long as there's some title there. And then you're going to notice when you use Word, it defaults to putting an extra space, not just the double spacing, but an extra space in between when you go from like your title here to your first paragraph, or you make an indentation and change paragraph. So like right here, if you just use Word as it normally formatted, most of you will get an extra space. So basically you end up with 3 spaces instead of the normal double spacing of 2. To correct that, now this is a PDF, so I'm not going to be able to show you every single step of this, but it's super easy. You're going to highlight your 2 sentences and you're going to right click. So when you're in Word, right click and it will say add or remove spaces. There's one before and after the line. It should always say add, which means don't click on it. You keep it as add, because if it says remove, that means there's an extra space. So you do want to click it if it says remove. If it says remove, click on it. If it says add in both places, don't click on it, because we don't want to add extra spaces in between things like paragraphs or like here when you go from your header to your title or your title to your first paragraph. So just, you could even highlight your whole document, right click, and you can remove all the extra spaces. You don't have to do it for every instance. So please make sure that you remove those extra spaces. You'll notice there's indentions, that's writing 101. And then I'm going to go all the way to the end of the paper and show you the works cited page. So again, you'll see our page numbers have carried through. There's only the double spacing. Works cited is not bolded, and it's works with an S. Even if there's one reference listed, it's still works cited. And then the main thing I really want to show you here is how the indentions work. So it's kind of opposite day here when we look at indentions. So in your works cited or in your references here, you'll see the first line is not indented and all lines after that are indented. And then there's just the normal double spacing, and you go to your next reference. No extra spaces needed. So no extra spaces needed at the top, no extra spaces needed between works cited and your reference. And always make sure that this works cited, I'm just showing you, there's your last page of your paper and then your works cited. See the writing ends here. This always starts on a new page, so make sure you don't have it hanging. On that note, what I would like you to do is make sure that if you had, for example, one sentence like a header that fell naturally right here, just know you can push that down to the next page. So if say this sentence and then there was a header here, now you don't have to use header. Our papers are way too short really to have headers, but if you want a header or subheader, just make sure you use the MLA formatting, and that is discussed on the website I'm going to give you for additional MLA review. Just make sure you don't put it here at the very bottom of the page. You would, in that case, that's called a hanging header. You just push it down to the next page. So this was a quick 6-7 minutes to go over MLA. And now I want to jump into some more content that I want to share with you related to the Constitution and our foundations of American government. So let me switch over to my PowerPoint. And we're going to just do a really brief look at checks and balances because, one, this is very relevant in the news today, and we always want to make sure that we connect our work to quote-unquote real life and what's happening out there in the world, and really helping you have an educated, informed perspective. Because we know sometimes, maybe a lot of times, emotions and feelings, experiences, backgrounds, influences us and how we think. So there's a lot of things, even the news, that can influence us, and we want to come at things with a very informed perspective. And so these things could impact you as in regard to especially the health field and your work. So we really want to make sure we understand how this works. And so obviously we have 3 branches. I say obviously because I'm pretty sure most of you are tracking that at this point in your educational career. But if you're not, just kind of take a look at this. So you've got the executive branch, judicial branch, and legislative branch. And then I'm trying to use my fancy interactions here. So hopefully the graphics make sense to you. This is not my forte, my strength area, but I am going to continue to try to make this a little bit interactive. And so I want you to just take a moment and don't cheat. Okay, I don't want you to Google this, AI it. I don't want you to look back at your material. I want you to really do this for yourself. I would like for you to write down either on a computer, on a little note sheet, Word document, or you can write it in pen paper, scrap of paper, napkin, whatever you want. Yesterday I was working in an office and I was somebody else's office and I didn't have any paper, and I found the back of a cardboard box, the edge that was torn off. So I pulled that out and wrote on that. I needed some notes. So whatever you have, write some notes. I want you to think about how you think the executive branch and the legislative branch checks and balances each other. How does the executive branch and the legislative branch have checks and balances for each other? So you see the green arrow means the legislative branch checks and keeps the executive in order. And obviously the White House is there. That's the president and everyone that's associated with him in that office. And then also vice versa, how does the executive branch have checks and balances for the legislative branch? So I want you to take a minute, pause this video, and write down what you think. Okay, have you paused your video? Hopefully you did. I'd like you to write that down. Remember, this is for you, right? You're dedicated to your career. We go back to that syllabus and where we think about our core values, about integrity and really just being hungry for the team and creativity and hungry to learn. That's where this comes into place in an asynchronous class. So I'm trusting that you paused me and wrote down your notes. Now I want you to do that again for the judicial and the legislative branch. How does one, such as the judicial, balance and check the legislative branch, and then vice versa with the opposite way? So you see the green arrow and the red arrow, meaning it goes both ways. So pause this video and jot those notes down. And remember, this is just from your brain, just what you think. No needing to look it up. Okay, did you pause the video? I hope you did. I hope you didn't cheat. I really wanted you to just test yourself, just test your thinking. This is also kind of a metacognitive technique where you actually, your little neurons and electrons are firing, and it's going to help you really connect with this material and deepen your understanding. Okay, one more time. I want you to pause. I think you see where I'm going now, right? And you're going to write executive to judicial and vice versa. So how does the executive branch check the judicial branch and vice versa? So the blue and red arrows to your top left. I want you to pause my video and jot down those notes. All right, so now you're going to hit play. Welcome back. And let's look at this information, okay? So let's look at Congress, which is your legislative branch, right? Congress is made up of your House of Representatives and your Senate. And we're going to look at how that checks and balances the executive branch, which is your president. So just check your thinking. Take your notes and crosswalk it with the list that's here. And I will move my video over. And again, what I would recommend you doing is pause this video and go through and see what you were right about. Even if you didn't use the exact language, that's okay. If you had an idea and you kind of put down a couple of words and you knew what you were talking about in your head, see if you have any of these answers or how close you were. Maybe there's something that you're kind of proud of yourself, like, oh, I knew that. That was good. I didn't even know I knew that. Or maybe there's something you're like, oh, I didn't know that exists. And so I wonder why. I wonder how this works. So I really want you to take a moment and do that. And then I'm sure you kind of see our flow now. You'll pause the video, crosswalk your notes to this, and then we'll go to the next. So I'll let you pause and I'll stop talking. All right, so now we're looking at the checks and balances within the Congress, and which is legislative, and the judicial branch, which is your Supreme Court, right? So lots of things on the news lately in the last couple of years about the Supreme Court. Hopefully some things are triggering to a connection to our work last week where we talked about who you vote for. So who you vote for at the local level, you've got your local, you've got your state, and then you've got the national. And this is really what we're talking about now is the national, but you can see how all of that kind of maybe funnels upward and impacts, right? So one thing impacts the next. Who you vote for to represent you impacts who they're voting for, or how they enact and enable and use these checks and balances even. So again, you're pausing your video and you're just checking to see, did you come up with this? Did you know that the people in Congress can impeach Supreme Court justices? Did you even know? Because most of the time we talk about how it's a lifelong appointment. We don't really talk about impeachment. So check yourself, pause the video, I'll stop talking. And drum roll for the last one. So again, you're going to look at the answers and then you're going to crosswalk it with your notes. You're going to pause the video and see what you were able to identify. Alrighty, so we're going to continue. Again, I'm not going to read this to you because I really want you to do some processing. And I want you to look at your notes and what's here and really make some connections to your understanding. And what I'm hoping this leads to is not just understanding, but questions. I want you to really engage with the news and what's happening in the world and the things that might impact the health field from an informed perspective of a person that doesn't just say what they feel, because it's one thing to say, I feel this and I feel that. We all walk around with lots of opinions these days, but I really want to help you be able to ask questions, especially when you're engaging with someone who you might be voting for, right? Would you be willing to? Why haven't you? Did you know? I know. Like a lot of times, I think politicians probably and the government officials kind of bank on us not knowing information. So I really want to build your confidence to be able to question and engage in this discourse. So again, you're pausing and checking your notes, thinking about what stands out to you. Oops, sorry, I went too fast past that one. So we're looking at each one, right? So that's why there's so many. So how does one check the other? So what's those checks and balances? So you're going through, double checking your notes. I'll cue you now to pause and see if you came up with this. There's been a lot of this happening in the last few years. So I'll stretch your brain a little bit real quick when you pause and you look to see if you came up with judicial review. Maybe you didn't call it judicial review in your notes, but maybe you identified, hey, there was this big case recently, or a couple of big cases recently where we overturned a certain law, several big ones, okay? So I want you to think about, whether or not you called it judicial review or not. What are those implications? How does all this connect? So again, I'm prompting you to pause and play, and we'll go to the next. Oops, sorry, I keep going so fast. You'll notice actually there's less checks and balances here. When you look at the president and the judicial, it seems like that's the least amount of checking and balancing. I guess that's maybe why our presidents like to appoint judges. So, there's sometimes a president doesn't necessarily get to appoint a judge. It just depends on who's leaving, who's passed away or sick, etc., has stepped down. So there's really some really, these judges stay a long time. So it's a really powerful it's a power move when a president's able to select a Supreme Court justice, because they are there for life. You don't always get that, especially if you get to appoint several. And there's not that many, honestly, checks and balances. So the more leaning towards the president that the Supreme Court tends to do in their opinions, the better for the executive branch. So just give you a moment to pause and think and reflect. And then we're right back to where we started. All right. Well, hopefully you stretched your brain, and hopefully the checks and balances worksheet here helped you dig into the material you read about this week. But visually, for me, I'm a visual person. I needed to see that. Hopefully cognitively you were able to process what you already knew, you thought you knew. And really, please lean into those real world connections so that you can approach things with not only an informed perspective, but a person who knows not just to ask questions, but what questions to ask that will help you to be more educated in these conversations. Have a great day. I will make sure that this is embedded in your lecture activity for your questions to answer. Thank you. Bye.